At some point, your circle got smaller. The messages slowed down. The energy shifted. People you once felt close to started feeling distant, unfamiliar, almost heavy to be around. It was not because you failed them. It was because something inside you changed. You started seeing people clearly. Their tone, their silence, their hidden intentions, things others overlook became impossible for you to ignore. And that is where everything began to break apart. Awakened empaths do not lose friends by accident. They outgrow what no longer feels real. Connections built on convenience, habits, or surface-level understanding begin to fall away. And here is the part few people talk about. This shift does not happen loudly. It happens quietly, almost invisibly, until one day you look around and realize the world feels different. The deeper you awaken, the more alone you feel. And that feeling can be confusing, even painful, because it challenges everything you once believed about connection and belonging. There is a hidden truth behind this experience that most people never fully understand. Emotional depth changes the way the brain processes social interaction. Studies in psychology show that highly sensitive individuals process emotional cues more intensely, activating deeper layers of awareness. This means an awakened empath is not just feeling more, they are detecting patterns, inconsistencies, and emotional signals at a level that reshapes how they relate to others. Over time, this creates a natural separation from people who operate on a different frequency of awareness. In this video, you will discover why awakened empaths often find themselves alone, the psychological and emotional reasons behind this shift, and why this phase is actually a powerful transformation rather than a loss. You will understand why certain friendships fade, why surface connections start to feel draining, and how emotional depth becomes a form of strength that most people never develop. There are also lesser-known patterns behind empath isolation that reveal how growth changes social dynamics in ways that feel uncomfortable at first, yet lead to something far more meaningful. Stay with this video until the end because the final insight will completely change how you see your own journey. It will help you understand that this phase is not about losing people. It is about aligning with a deeper version of yourself. And once you see it clearly, you will never look at your relationships the same way again. Welcome to our channel, where we explore the deeper truths behind human behavior and emotional awareness. If this message resonates with you, make sure to subscribe so you do not miss the next video that might help you understand yourself on a whole new level. Being an empath is not just feeling more. It goes far beyond emotion. It becomes a way of seeing the world that most people never develop. You start to notice things that usually pass unnoticed. The tone behind someone's voice, the pause before they respond, the way their words and their energy do not fully match. Conversations begin to feel different, almost layered, as if there is always something beneath the surface waiting to be understood. While others focus on what is being said, you find yourself paying attention to what is being avoided. This awareness does not come from effort. It feels automatic. You walk into a room and sense the atmosphere before anyone even speaks. You can feel tension, discomfort, or hidden emotions without needing clear proof. It is subtle, yet strong enough to shape how you respond to people. Over time, this creates a deeper sensitivity to intentions. You begin to recognize when someone is being genuine and when they are simply playing a role. Even small inconsistencies start to stand out, making it harder to ignore what once felt normal. At first, this level of perception can feel like an advantage. You understand people more easily, you connect with emotions that others struggle to express, but slowly, it begins to shift your entire experience of relationships. Interactions that once felt simple start to feel complex. You become aware of unspoken expectations, hidden frustrations, and emotional distance that others seem comfortable ignoring. It creates a quiet tension within you because you are constantly aware of layers that are never openly discussed. And once you reach this point, there is no going back. You cannot return to seeing things at a surface level. The awareness stays with you, shaping how you think, how you feel, and how you connect. It changes your reactions, your boundaries, and even your sense of trust. Situations that once felt easy now require more emotional processing. You begin to question things you never questioned before simply because you see more than what is presented on the surface. That is where everything starts to change. Friendships begin to change in ways that feel quiet at first, almost unnoticeable, until the distance becomes clear. One of the first shifts happens when you stop tolerating energy that feels forced or insincere. Conversations that once filled time start to feel empty. Small talk becomes draining rather than comforting. You sit there listening, responding, but something inside you feels disconnected. It becomes harder to pretend interest in topics that have no depth, no meaning, no honesty behind them. You start craving something real, something that goes beyond surface words, something that allows you to feel understood rather than just included. At the same time, your sensitivity grows stronger. You begin to feel everything more deeply, especially the emotional undercurrents that others might ignore. You notice when someone's energy shifts, even in subtle ways. A slight change in tone, a forced smile, a delayed response can create a sense of unease that stays with you. Even when someone appears friendly on the outside, you can feel the distance beneath it. This creates a quiet conflict within you, because while others seem comfortable continuing as usual, you are aware of something that feels out of place. Pretending that everything is fine starts to feel exhausting, almost impossible, because your awareness keeps pulling your attention back to what is real. As this continues, another layer of change begins to unfold. You start to outgrow the versions of people you once connected with. It is not about judgment or rejection, it is about growth moving in different directions. Not everyone evolves at the same pace, and this creates a natural separation over time. Interests change, priorities shift, and the emotional connection that once felt strong begins to weaken. What once felt normal starts to feel heavy, almost restrictive, as if you are holding on to something that no longer fits who you are becoming. The familiarity is still there, but the alignment is fading, and that difference becomes harder to ignore with each passing interaction. There comes a moment when the shift becomes impossible to ignore, and that is when the questions begin. You start looking back at your relationships with a different lens, noticing patterns that once felt normal but now seem unclear or even unsettling. Interactions that used to feel effortless begin to carry a sense of doubt. You replay conversations in your mind, picking up on small details that did not stand out before. A certain tone, a repeated behavior, a subtle lack of presence. It slowly builds into a deeper sense of awareness that changes how you see everything around you. You begin questioning everything: the connection, the history, the meaning behind it all. Were these people ever truly aligned with you? Or was the bond built on something less stable than you once believed? It becomes harder to separate genuine connection from comfort or habit. You start to realize that some relationships may have existed because you were always willing to understand, always willing to adjust, always willing to give more than you received. That realization can feel heavy because it challenges the way you once viewed those connections. At the same time, another thought begins to form, one that feels even more difficult to accept. Maybe you were simply too kind to notice before, too willing to overlook what did not feel right, too focused on keeping peace rather than paying attention to the deeper truth. This awareness does not come with anger, it comes with a quiet sense of clarity that slowly replaces confusion. You start to see how often you ignored your own intuition in order to maintain relationships that were never fully balanced. This is where the emotional weight settles in, because empaths do not lose people in the way it often appears. The distance, the silence, the change in connection is not always about something breaking, it is about something being revealed. They finally see people for who they are, without the filters of expectation or hope. And once that clarity takes hold, it becomes impossible to return to the way things once felt, even if part of you wishes it could. This is where it gets hard. The awareness that once felt like clarity begins to carry a different weight. You find yourself pulling back from people, not out of anger, but because staying feels uncomfortable in a way that is difficult to explain. The spaces you used to fill with conversations and connections start to grow quiet. You spend more time alone, sometimes by choice, sometimes because there is no other option that feels right. The silence can feel unfamiliar at first, almost unsettling, as if something important is missing, even when you know deep down that something necessary has shifted. As this distance grows, a different kind of tension begins to form. You feel misunderstood in ways that are hard to put into words. When you try to explain how you feel, it does not always translate. Others may see your distance as coldness or withdrawal, while you experience it as clarity and self-protection. This gap between how you feel and how others perceive you creates a quiet sense of isolation. It is not just about being alone. It is about feeling unseen, even when you are surrounded by people who once felt familiar. That is when the doubt starts to surface. You begin wondering if something is wrong with you. The thought appears subtly, then lingers longer than expected. You question whether your sensitivity has become too much, whether your awareness is creating problems that did not exist before. There are moments when you consider going back to how things used to be, just to feel that sense of connection again, but even that thought feels distant because you know you cannot return to a version of yourself that no longer fits. In the middle of this phase, something deeper is quietly unfolding. The isolation begins to take on a different meaning, even if it is not immediately clear. It stops feeling like something that is happening against you and starts revealing itself as something that is shaping you. But this phase is not punishment, even though it can feel heavy at times. It is transformation, unfolding slowly, creating space for something that is still taking form beneath the surface. Something begins to stabilize within you as this phase continues, and it shows up in subtle but powerful ways. You start to become emotionally independent without forcing it or even fully realizing it at first. The need for constant validation begins to fade. You no longer rely on others to confirm your worth or to make you feel secure in your decisions. There is a quiet confidence that starts to take shape, one that comes from understanding your own emotional world rather than seeking approval from outside of it. Your peace becomes your priority, and that shift changes how you move through every interaction. Along with this independence, your awareness turns into a form of protection. You begin to guard your energy with more intention. It is no longer about being available to everyone or maintaining every connection out of habit. You choose who gets access to you, and that choice becomes more deliberate over time. You start to recognize that not everyone can meet you at the level of depth you naturally offer. Some people may appreciate it, while others may feel uncomfortable with it or take it for granted. This understanding creates a natural boundary, one that does not need to be explained or justified. As this continues, your relationship with solitude begins to change as well. Time alone stops feeling like something you have to endure and starts feeling like something you value. You learn to enjoy your own presence without needing distraction or constant noise. The silence that once felt heavy begins to feel clear and steady. It gives you space to think, to process, to reconnect with yourself in a way that was not possible before. Solitude becomes a place where your thoughts settle and your emotions make sense, rather than a space filled with uncertainty. Within all of this, a deeper realization takes hold. You start to see your situation from a different perspective, one that feels more grounded and honest. You are not alone because you are unworthy, even if it once felt that way. You are alone because you have become selective, because your awareness no longer allows you to settle for connections that do not align with who you are becoming. As your inner world becomes clearer, your connections begin to shift in a way that feels natural rather than forced. When you evolve, your connections change, and this change does not happen through effort or control. It happens through alignment. You start to notice that you are no longer drawn to the same dynamics that once felt familiar. The need to maintain every relationship begins to fade, replaced by a quieter understanding that connection should feel mutual and balanced. This awareness influences how you show up around others, often without you having to say anything directly. At the same time, your behavior begins to reflect this shift. You stop chasing people, not out of pride, but because the desire to convince or hold on no longer feels right. The energy that once went into trying to maintain certain bonds starts to settle within you. You no longer feel the urge to explain yourself repeatedly or to seek reassurance from those who cannot fully understand you. This creates space, and within that space, something different begins to take shape. Your interactions become more intentional, more present, and less driven by expectation. As this space grows, you start attracting those who understand you in ways that feel effortless. These connections often appear quietly, without the intensity or confusion that may have defined past relationships. There is a sense of ease in how conversations flow, a natural rhythm that does not require constant effort to maintain. You feel seen without having to prove anything, and understood without needing to explain every detail. The connection feels steady rather than overwhelming, grounded rather than uncertain. Over time, the number of people in your life may become smaller, yet the quality of those connections deepens in a way that feels more meaningful. Fewer people, deeper bonds. The interactions you do have carry more presence, more honesty, and a stronger sense of mutual respect. There is less noise, less confusion, and more clarity in how you relate to others. Each connection begins to reflect the level of awareness you have reached, creating a dynamic that feels more aligned with who you are becoming. Awakened empaths do not have no friends in the way it may seem on the surface. The space around them is not empty by accident. It is intentional, shaped by awareness and experience. They reach a point where tolerance for what feels false begins to fade, where staying connected for the sake of familiarity no longer feels right. The shift may look like loss from the outside, yet from within it carries a different meaning. It becomes clear that what once felt like connection was sometimes comfort, sometimes habit, sometimes an attempt to hold on to something that was already changing. As this understanding settles in, the feeling of loss starts to transform into something more grounded. What feels like distance begins to reveal itself as alignment. It becomes easier to recognize that not every connection is meant to stay, and that letting go creates space for something more real. The emotional weight that once came from trying to maintain certain relationships begins to lift, replaced by a quieter sense of clarity. There is less confusion, less internal conflict, and more awareness of what truly feels right. Real connection starts to take on a different meaning. It is no longer about how many people are around you or how often you interact. It becomes about depth, presence, and honesty, the kind of connection that does not drain your energy or leave you questioning your worth. Instead, it supports you, expands you, and allows you to feel understood without effort. This is where everything begins to feel more stable, more genuine, and more aligned with who you are becoming. Have you ever felt this kind of shift in your life, where your circle changes and your perspective on people begins to evolve, like you are slowly outgrowing the environment around you while searching for something deeper? Share your experience in the comments because your story might resonate with someone else who is going through the same phase. And if this message connected with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content that explores these deeper aspects of growth and awareness.